our afternoon of St. Mark's Present. We have a wonderful concert in store for you today. After the concert, please feel free to stay and meet the artists. There's a little reception out there with some cookies and punch and coffee, so please stay and have a little nibble and a visit. And as you go out there, you'll see on your left there's a little basket. And if you're feeling so led and you'd like to donate something to help us sustain this concert series, we would greatly appreciate that. So, without further ado, we have a wonderful trio for you today with Laura Resendez on flute, Mary Dickon on harp, and Colette Abel on viola. So please give them a big hand.
much for coming out to hear this music and just to sharing this concert with us. We're going to be joined by Colette, so we can actually be a trio now, not just a duo. The first piece you heard in your program, it says it's the Entr'acte for Flute and Harp by Ibert. I feel like I should offer a little bit of a correction. It was written for flute or violin and guitar. And the harp is kind of like the guitar, just a few more strings. So we made it work for this combination. The next piece we're going to play for you is a trio by Takemitsu. And this trio is titled And Then I Knew 'Twas Wind, which comes from the first two lines of an Emily Dickinson poem. So she started her poem by saying, like rain it sounded till it curved, and then I knew 'twas wind. And this piece, Takemitsu wrote it, and it was premiered in 1992. It was just 4 years before his death, so it was one of his later works. And it was heavily influenced and inspired by the piece we're going to end the program with, the Debussy Sonata. So this is sort of like a foreshadowing that you're getting on this. And it's the program notes that are included in your program, I think, are a wonderful description of this idea of wind showing up through these musical fragments. And one of the ways Takemitsu does that is through using some extended techniques on these instruments, kind of really exploiting the different colors that can be made. So on the harp, you will hear things like harmonics, where instead of just playing the note, it's played in a way that makes it sound an octave higher and with a little bit different color. Sometimes you'll hear me play really low on the strings, even with my nails, to get more of a percussive sound. There'll even be a moment, and you can watch for this, where you'll get to see me, no, I think this won't be a surprise, where you'll get to see me play on the strings with this metal tuning key. So all sorts of interesting techniques that he plays with on the harp. And I'm gonna, since I'm not a flute player, I'm gonna let Laura tell you about what he does on the flute.
So it was interesting when you're demonstrating the percussive, like with your nails, has a very like Eastern tonality to it, which is something I'm going to talk to you about with the Debussy. So that's another cool tie-in. So I'm going to demo 3 extended techniques for you that you're going to hear in this. And if you are an avid consumer of flute music, you've probably heard some of them, at least one of them before. But there are some really cool things in here that you may not have heard, even if you're a flute fanatic. So the first one is pretty common, and it's called flutter tonguing. And if you can roll your R's and play flute, then you can probably do it. If you can't roll your R's, you can still do it with your throat, but I don't do it that way. So it sounds like this. Neat, right? Okay, so then the other one that you're going to hear is some like timbre slides. So he writes in specific fingerings to change the quality of the sound, and I'm going to be like sliding my fingers back to go from this sort of stuffy, not typical flute sound to the like traditional open sound. And then, I love that that was going to get applause. I also like it. My favorite one in this work, and he uses this a lot for his flute writing in other pieces as well, is the color trills. So a normal trill changes notes. It's from one note to the note right next to it. Trill. But he writes in some fingerings where you're not actually changing notes, you're just changing the quality of the note. So those are some neat techniques you're going to hear.
And I'm going to let Colette tell you a little bit about what he does with the viola.
So the viola has a very unique timbre. Some people feel it's very warm and melancholy, but I'm not sure that Toru Takemitsu exploits that, especially in this piece, because the dynamics are overall very, very delicate and quiet. And He actually asked for the violas to play with little bow pressure or diminuendo to nothing. There are also harmonics, which are quite delicate, maybe kind of reminiscent of the flute. And sometimes he asks for us to play on the fingerboard, which sounds kind of like, or sometimes on the bridge, which is that sound, kind of scratchy. Even though the dynamics are very quiet, I had my mute on because we were last rehearsing the Debussy trio, which the whole first page is muted, even though the viola needs to have a beautiful sound at the beginning of that piece. He chose to have it played with a mute, but Toru Takamitsu did not give us that advantage. He just wants us to play very quietly without bow pressure. So I see one of my students here. Do not try this at home. This is not part of normal viola technique that you'll find useful at North Central.
Great, thanks. And as you're listening to this piece, it's the melodies come in fragments in this piece. And so you'll hear snippets of melodies come in and come out. And I'm going to play for you you'll hear it at the beginning of the piece. It's a little fragment of a melody, just because I want to invite you to kind of get that in your ear, because you'll hear that kind of move around our instruments throughout this piece. And with all that said, and then I knew 'twas wind. Yep, we'll do.
So the next piece, we're playing with viola and harp, and it's called Pièce en forme de habanera, written by Maurice Ravel in 1907, and he wrote it as a vocalise, which is a vocal exercise to develop the full range of the voice, and for a bass singer. And I read something online that described it as a blindingly difficult virtuosic exercise. And he shortly after he wrote it for the bass voice, he transcribed it for cello, and since that time almost every instrument wants to be a blinding virtuoso, so they've all claimed it as their repertoire. So without any more ado, we will play it.
All right. So the final piece on our program is what you've all been waiting for. It's the Debussy. It's one of the giants of the chamber music repertoire, and it really established this instrumentation of flute, viola, and harp as one of the standards of the chamber music repertoire. It was written in 1915, and there was one tiny work, I can't even remember the composer's name, in 1905 that was written for this combination before, but this was the work that really solidified it. And there are a ton of parallels between this work and the Takamitsu that we played earlier. One interesting tidbit is that Debussy wrote this shortly before his death, and Takamitsu also composed And Then I Knew 'Twas Wind toward the end of his life. Debussy was in the middle of dealing with terminal cancer when he was writing this. It was intended to be part of a set of 6 sonatas that was commissioned for various instruments. This is the middle one. There were only 3 that were completed before he passed, and this is the middle one. The description that is in your program is just incredibly poetic and beautiful, I think, so enjoy reading that. I'll offer you a little bit more information. This piece, for me, feels very emotionally detached and ambiguous, and at the same time, extremely heartfelt and touching. It is simultaneously melancholy and joyful. Debussy actually wrote in a letter attempting to describe the piece, I can't say whether one should laugh or cry, perhaps both at the same time. So we'll see. If you're all crying and laughing at the end, we'll know we did our job. It does utilize Eastern harmonies and unique tone color combinations, which you heard a lot of in the Takamitsu. A lot of harmonics, that flute harmonic or flute tone that combines with viola harmonics. And it really just, I think that probably these sorts of tone color combinations and like the fading in and out of colors is part of what popularized this combination, because people had never heard that before. So it was new and exciting. Probably some people hated it, but not us and not you. It's in 3 movements. The first movement develops out of a series of 5 motivic like fragments, similar to the Takamitsu, which then return at the end of the movement, but they're in a different order. So you'll have this sense of familiarity, but not an exact quote when you get to the end. So you'll be like, huh, this feels right. And then the second movement alludes to a sort of elegant minuet dance from the French Baroque period, but it's interrupted quite abruptly by 2 different bright, shimmering, exuberant melodies. And so you'll get to be surprised by those. I mean, you have to pretend to be surprised. I told you about it. And then the final movement is very dramatic and exhilarating. At the very last second, Debussy brings back the motive from the very beginning of the piece to just tie everything together, bring all of your emotions full circle. So with that, we really hope you enjoy. We have had a blast working together on this, and we're really excited to present it for you.
Thank you.